For me, global mobility is about looking at talent management of employees from one location to another. It is part of the talent strategy for a company. Global mobility has logistics, which is relocation, immigration, looking at the compliance, making sure that somebody is legally allowed to go to a country and work there with their families living there. But actually, for me, global mobility is also about the talent management. How do we make sure that we have the right people moving from one location to another, that they're going to be successful in their new location? And as professionals in this field, we have all the resources, the knowledge, and the experience to be able to advise the business on that. And global mobility is including the talent management part, the help with talent acquisition, and of course the logistics to move somebody from one location to another.
Be excited, but be informed. Everything is in the details over here in Costa Rica. If you don't read everything you need to read, you don't go over every document that you need to go over, things or processes might get very difficult for you. Because, sometimes there is this concept or idea that since it's Latin America, everything is way easier. And yes, but at the same time, no, because it's very bureaucratic, very, very bureaucratic. So yeah, just pay attention, be informed, do be excited. Never lose that hope, never lose that excitement.
I think that one of the things that makes it so attractive is the level of support that provided from a mobility perspective when coming to the US. I can think back to a previous organization that I worked for that was a very large global organization, and in speaking with my colleagues that worked in other countries and comparing of benefits and support provided from an assignment standpoint, it was arguably night and day. And night and day in the sense that the US support was just much greater.
I think the one tip that I would give is to make sure that you stay on top of different immigration changes and then set the right expectations internally with stakeholders and especially with the employees. I think we've seen in the US, especially, every 4 years or maybe a little bit longer, but when we have a change in the president, a lot of the immigration policy can change. And I think that's definitely a really nerve-wracking thing for employees. And so being able to give them whatever information you have is going to be key to making sure you have happy stakeholders and happy employees.
I think the US is popular from a headquarters perspective just because of the talent. There is a lot of really great talent in the US. You find that even foreign nationals from India, from China, from Europe want to come to the US and learn at our universities. So the talent pipelines, there's just a lot of really great talent to choose from.
I think that there's so much variety in the US. I feel like in other countries, it's maybe a little more black and white. And in the US, there's so many options. There's obviously so many different places in the US. We were talking about earlier, the East Coast and, the Midwest and the West Coast. And there's so many different, places that people can land. And then even within a particular place, even within the Bay Area, there's so many, neighborhoods and counties that you could move to that's going to have a completely different experience. And so I feel like in the US, there really just has that ability to make a really rich experience for people. It's funny, when I, not as much at my current company, but when I was at Tesla, we used to move a lot of Europeans to the US. And some people had never really traveled before or relocated. I had one individual that I always think about who, had never moved, more than 5 miles from the place he was born, right? In a little town in England, right? And he always kind of stayed there. His whole family was there. And he had like teenage kids and a wife and is moving to the US on a whim. And I'm like, wow, that's a really big life change, And sometimes you could kind of see a mile away, hey, you know what? This relocation is not going to go well because this person's, the expectations and just the change is going to be too much. And sometimes people really surprise you and are able to settle in and do a fantastic job. So I feel like it is, with people coming from all over the place, coming to the U.S., there's a place and a opportunity for everyone. We had somebody who, in my current company, moved from Australia recently, and he had terrible timing. He moved like December of 2019, so right before the pandemic. So right when him and his wife actually settled in, everything shut down. And so they've been really lonely, So I feel like it really, sometimes it just happens, during time and what the right spot is. And I think, in a different situation, he probably would have had a totally different experience. But I think with mobility in the US, and also service providers, I think are huge. There's so many new technologies and new ways to make the mobility experience better. I think it's really improved what is possible.
Canada has been known to be a fantastic country, a country that has a broad ethnic background and communities. The climate is absolutely not the best in the world in the winter months. However, it has a reputation of being one of the greatest countries in the world to live in, with high quality and standard of living, with great opportunities, and huge embrace of ethnic and cultural differences and backgrounds.
First of all is the cultural richness that Mexico brings. We have these very culturally diverse location, even within Mexico as a country. So you would see people not having the same background when you go from north to south, going to center Mexico. So that allows for additional diversity and inclusion when it comes to global mobility, even when you move people within the same country. And when you talk about cross-border, it definitely brings growth to the table. One thing that I've seen in my experience is that when companies enter Mexico, they realize that as Mexico as a culture likes to have their branding. And with that, companies that have been successful in entering the country as a business have differentiated their business locally through a specific branding. And that has enabled, I think, the country to be continuously growing, continuously changing. And that is, I think, one of the key things of why global mobility is so interested in also entering the country.
The US is attractive to global mobility programs. It's just the amount of companies, the amount of employees and talent that want to come to the US. They want to work in the US, gain that experience with a lot of the large multinationals.
So I'd say the best advice I could give to a global mobility professional who's moving people into the United States is that, number one, they need to be on top of our US immigration laws. They can change quickly, so it's important to have a good relationship with your immigration provider and understand exactly how the different visas work and what the timings could be. and addressing the fact that the employees won't have a US credit history, and how are you going to help them get certain things done in order to set up their home in the United States, and learning and understanding how the taxation works in the US.